So there's a blog post that I wrote that I fell in love with because I was completely honest with myself and with everybody else for the very first time. It's called Maybe One Day. I've currently been reading the novel Present Over Perfect by Shauna Nyquist. Every page in her book speaks so much truth because I can relate to the chaotic life she describes. And one of the many things that she said really connected to me, and I'd like to read it to you guys. I believed that work would save me, make me happy, solve my problems, that if I absolutely wore myself out, happiness would be waiting for me on the other side of all that work. But it wasn't. On the other side was just more work, more expectations, more responsibility. I trained a whole group of people to know that I would never say no. I would never say this is too much. I would never ask for more time or more space, and I would never bow out. And so they kept asking, and I was everyone's responsible girl. And so there I was, running around every minute of every day, doing favors for people who wouldn't even tell me thank you, prioritizing those who didn't better me as an individual, and committed myself to responsibilities that I once loved, but later just became a hassle. And I'm tired. And so maybe one day, I'll learn how to say no. I'll learn how to speak up for myself. And I'll learn how to tell someone how they made me feel. Maybe one day. I was happy helping others. It became a passion of mine to volunteer more than I needed to, pay it forward at drive-thrus, and help anyone who asked. I just wanted to take the stress off of other people's shoulders. It made me happy to give. And I made sure that people knew that they could approach me so I could help them. And because of this, I described myself as selfless. And after giving as much of myself as I could to everyone else, I'd use the little energy I had left to focus on school and work. I'd get home, maybe a little too tired, to have a self-care moment. This became my routine for as long as I can remember, giving to everyone else, and then giving to myself if I could. And I thought I was doing well, but I'd get home much too tired. I had stretched myself out so thin that I would leave myself with nothing. No self-love, no self-compassion, no energy, and no time for myself. But I thought that being selfless was a great characteristic to have. I surprised myself when I saw the dictionary definition of selfless, which means having no concern for self. Did that mean I didn't care about myself at all? I was a little confused. When researching, I came across the article from Time magazine called Millennials, the me generation. According to the article, Joel Stein claimed that millennials are the most selfish and narcissistic people of this generation, stating that 58% more college students scored higher on the narcissism scale in 2009 than in 1982. And then I realized that the definition of selfish is to be concerned excessively or exclusively with oneself, seeking or concentrating on one's own advantage, pleasure, or well-being without the regard for others. This was my generation, but this was not me. Every year's senior exhibition project is based on anything of our interest. My teacher describes it as, do something that you've always wanted to do, but you never had the time to do so. A close friend of mine that I've known for years has constantly reminded me that I need to take time for myself. She calls them self-care days, where I relax and take care of my mental well-being. I knew what my project was going to be about. This is my time, and I decided I would be selfish for a year. I created a to-do list. I created a to-do list of things I wanted to accomplish over the year, and I had a fear of failure. And so when making this list, I knew that I would put things that I'd be scared to do. I wanted to get out of my comfort zone, and I wanted to learn why was failure looked on so bad, and what if I didn't finish my whole to-do list? It was going to be my year because it was my time to prioritize myself. One of the major things, most exciting things that I did on my to-do list was go skydiving. Plane rides made me nauseous, and heights made me anxious. For months, I thought that I would never really get myself to go skydiving. Maybe it was just going to be one of those things that I wouldn't cross off my list, and that's okay, because part of it was that I was not going to complete everything. I literally came to find out that one morning I dragged my family along a ride, and I flew off a plane 14,000 feet above the air. And it was the most freeing experience. I saw everything, and in 2 seconds, my fears were gone. I would have never gotten the courage to skydive if it wasn't for my project, if it wasn't for taking the time for myself. I was slowly starting to prioritize myself, have fun, but most importantly, love myself. Something that was also necessary to do was one of the hardest things to cross off my list. I didn't know how to say no, and so I would always say yes. And this year, I decided that I would stick on a decision. How was I going to suddenly start to occasionally say no when I would always say yes? I couldn't bring myself to physically say it. I decided that I would stray away from relationships that I found were very unhealthy for me. I built up the courage to say no to things that I didn't feel comfortable doing, and decided to stick to my decision on things that I knew were best for me, regardless of what other people thought. Again, this was my time, my year. A last story that I want to share with you guys about my to-do list. Although I was being selfish for a whole year, I also wanted to do what I love most, random acts of kindness. My high school's foundation is building relationships with one another. We have an advisory that becomes a home for the next 4 years of our high school experience. And so over the year of my senior year, I decided to write a personalized letter to everyone in my advisory, all 25 individuals, and decided to write to them how they were special to me. I wanted to surprise them all in doing so. So over the course of the year, they never knew that I was slowly knowing them a little bit more, and I would just add them to my letter. And at the end of the year, I sealed all the letters up in an envelope, in a school envelope, and I asked my dean if he could handwrite each name on the envelope to make it just seem a little more official. I wrote myself a letter too, because when I was going to present them, it would be weird if I didn't get a letter. So my letter said, "Dear Annette," well, this is kind of awkward. Sincerely, Annette. I sealed it up, and I put it in an envelope, and I asked my dean to write my name on it. When I was passing out the letters in my advisory that morning, I was expecting to find my letter, but I opened an envelope and I found a completely different letter. My dean had written a letter for me, thanking me for always having a smile on my face and inspiring him to get out of his comfort zone. What was my project doing? I feel like I was changing something, that I was really motivating people to get out there and just get out of their comfort zone. Do something that you're scared of, and it's going to be okay if you fail. I wrote 25 letters to my advisory expecting nothing in return, but I received a letter that I will forever cherish. Prioritizing myself was the best decision I have ever made. It's necessary to say no sometimes, to take time for ourselves, and to declutter our lives from unhealthy relationships. Being selfish didn't make me a horrible person. I don't think that by being selfish for a whole year, I became a very mean and unapproachable human being. I feel that I have grown so much more than I would have ever thought. Sorry. I'm no longer scared. I'm no longer fearful of failing. I'm no longer feeling guilty when I say no. I don't stretch myself beyond my limit, and that's okay, and that is something that I would have never learned if I decided to be selfish. I encourage you all to take a self-care day, for as long as you may need it. Maybe a day, a month, or a year, whatever is necessary for you. Don't feel guilty for putting yourself first. Be selfish and give selflessly. I have found that that's where true happiness is found. Thank you.